Hitachi. The history of Hitachi began in 1910, when a talented engineer Namihei Odaira founded a small workshop and produced the first batch of electric motors with a capacity of 5 horsepower. The name of the company, Hitachi, means dawn or sunrise in Japanese. Odaira chose it for a reason. He believed that his company would bring a new technological dawn to the country. He even designed an unusual emblem, 2 characters for sunrise and sun in a circle with diverging rays, symbolizing a man against a rising sun, dreaming of a brighter future. In the early decades, Hitachi focused on heavy electromechanics. The company grew by making generators, transformers, electric locomotives, and household appliances. As early as 1924, Hitachi built Japan's first mainline electric locomotive, and in 1932 it produced its first refrigerator. These successes established Hitachi's reputation as a reliable manufacturer of electrical equipment. By the early 1940s, Hitachi had also tried its luck in communications equipment, producing the telephone exchange, PBX. During World War II, the company, like the rest of Japan, went through hard times, but quickly recovered after 1945 and resumed growth, laying the foundation for future successes in electronics. It is important to note, until the mid-20th century, Hitachi products were not directly related to audio or video equipment. The company built industrial systems and home appliances, a base of technology that later allowed it to break into the hi-fi and AV market when the time was right. Japan was experiencing an economic miracle after the war, and Hitachi was not left behind. In the 1950s, the company made a loud name for itself in consumer electronics. It started with climate appliances. In 1952, Hitachi produced the first window air conditioner in Japan, and by 1957 it had produced its 1 millionth electric appliance. But the main event of the decade was the emergence of television. In Japan, regular television broadcasting started in 1953, and 3 years later, in 1956, the first Hitachi-branded television set appeared. It was a black-and-white model called Hitachi F100. In 1957, its mass production began, which coincided with a boom in demand. Japanese families were eager to buy a TV set to watch broadcasts of important events, for example, the wedding of the Crown Prince in 1959. Hitachi thus entered a new market for itself, consumer electronics. Soon Hitachi TV sets became a part of family life in Japan, a symbol of post-war progress. It is worth noting that the first TV receivers were lamp-based and quite energy-consuming. Hitachi, having experience in electronics, quickly began to improve the technology. Already in the 1960s, the company was developing its own kinescopes and tried to improve image quality. In 1965, Hitachi engineers created a 19-inch color CRT with rare earth phosphors, one of the first in the country. And by the end of the decade, Hitachi made a technological leap by switching televisions to solid-state transistor elements. In 1969, the company began mass production of all-transistor color televisions, more reliable and economical than the previous tube models. At the same time in the 1960s, Hitachi was also looking into audio equipment. While radio receivers and turntables in post-war Japan were initially the domain of other companies, by the end of the decade Hitachi had also entered the game. In 1969, the company introduced the Low-D loudspeaker system, two-way hi-fi speakers. This acronym stood for low distortion and became Hitachi's brand of high-quality audio equipment in the Japanese domestic market. The advent of Low-D marked the beginning of Hitachi's serious move into the realm of high-quality audio. The 1970s was a period of rapid development of Hitachi audio and video equipment. The company expanded on several markets at once: home audio components, VCRs, and even professional video equipment. In 1973, a subsidiary company, Hitachi Densha, was created, which was engaged in the production of camcorders, including for television studios. That is, Hitachi was already thinking big, to cover both music lovers at home and broadcasting companies. It succeeded. Hitachi established itself as a manufacturer of a full-fledged line of hi-fi equipment. From the early 1970s to the 1990s, the company produced amplifiers, tuners, cassette decks, turntables, acoustics, the whole range of components, and of a very high class. In Japan, the top models were sold under the already mentioned low-D brand, while for export they were sold under the name Hitachi. In 1973, the low-D brand made a loud statement. The low-D D4500 cassette recorder was released, which became a real sensation among audiophiles. This deck was one of the world's first three-headed cassette decks. Moreover, Hitachi engineers invented a new recording playback design for it, the so-called sandwich head, combining recording and playback heads in one unit. Previously, other manufacturers, Nakamichi, Sony, and so on, had used separate heads, but Hitachi came up with an innovative combined solution that soon became an industry standard. Low-D D4500 had a 3-motor tape puller with double capstan, impressively low detonation and noise, support for Dolby sound quality processing, and even calibration for the tape type. However, it was made only for Japanese market, but it earned a reputation in professional circles. Hitachi showed that it could compete on equal terms with audio giants. Another Hitachi pride in the 1970s was amplifiers. The company challenged the competition with new semiconductor technology. In 1977, the HMA 9500 was released under the low-D brand, which made history as the first commercially available amplifier to use high-power MOSFET transistors in its output stages. Until then, amplifiers had been built with bipolar transistors, but MOSFET, field effect transistors, offered better linearity and speed. Hitachi, being a major electronics manufacturer, was the first to bring this innovation to audio. The low-D HMA 9500 was a milestone. Thanks to MOSFET, it delivered extremely low distortion, wide frequency range, and a tube-like pleasant sound, combining 2 by 100 watts of power with high sound resolution. What's more, Hitachi not only used MOSFET in its own products. Since the late 70s, it has been the main supplier of such transistors to the entire industry. From 1977 to 1983, Hitachi remained the world's only manufacturer of LDMOS transistors, and many companies based their amplifiers on Hitachi components. Thus, Hitachi's contribution to the development of audio amplifiers was fundamental. It pushed the market towards the era of powerful and high-quality MOSFET amplifiers. Acoustics were not lagging behind either. The low-D brand in the 70s produced loudspeakers, including some unusual designs. Some models were so ambitious, like the special order low-D HS 5000, that today they are rare collector's items. The end of the 70s was marked in the audio industry by the so-called receiver wars, a competition to see who would make the most powerful and fancy stereo receiver for the home. American and Japanese brands, Marantz, Pioneer, Sansui, and others, traditionally dominated the field here, but Hitachi also took a shot. In 1978, the company released the flagship Hitachi SR2004 receiver, which was among the elite monsters of that era. It delivered 200 watts per channel and competed on equal terms with the best models on the market. For $950, the buyer received a giant unit weighing 25 kilograms and a meter wide, packed with advanced equipment. The SR2004 differed in that it used an unusual amplification circuit called Dynaharmony, called Series E inside Hitachi. In fact, it was a Class G amplifier. The essence of Class G is that there are 2 sets of transistors and 2 power levels. At quiet signals, the low voltage pair works, and at peaks the high voltage pair of transistors is activated. This allowed a dramatic increase in efficiency without loss of quality, a kind of turbocharging for an amplifier. Hitachi proudly advertised that the SR2004 could deliver up to 400 watts of short-term power, music power, with about 4 dB of dynamic headroom. Profile magazines confirmed it. In tests, the receiver produced even 222 watts per channel in the range of 20 Hz, 20 kHz with low distortion. These figures are impressive. The the SR-2004 could really compete for the status of the most powerful receiver of the late 70s. At the same time, it also received high marks in terms of sound quality and tuner sensitivity. However, Hitachi receivers were sometimes underestimated against the background of more famous competitors, so now vintage amateurs can get SR-2004 cheaper than similar monsters from Marantz or Pioneer. But in essence, this device confirmed that Hitachi has entered the world of hi-fi seriously and for a long time. Hitachi's reputation in the 1970s was a little different from that of Sony or Panasonic. Hitachi didn't focus on fancy portable devices or compact mass-market radios. It was winning respect among advanced audio enthusiasts by offering quality components. In a way, Hitachi resembled Matsushita Technics, that is, it was a techno corporation that managed to make excellent amplifiers and loudspeakers in parallel with turbine factories. It is also worth mentioning Maxell, which produced recording media. Back in the 1960s, Hitachi invested in the production of magnetic tapes, and in 1964, it became the owner of Maxell, or Hitachi Maxell Limited, to be more precise. It was Maxell that in 1966 launched the first compact cassettes for tape recorders on the Japanese market. This synergy helped Hitachi in the audio business. When selling cassette decks, it is good to have your cassette supplier. Maxell products were famous for their quality. Probably many people remember the iconic 1980s commercial with the man being blown away by the wave of sound from the speakers. He was blown away in his chair. It was an advert for Maxell cassettes. So Hitachi could literally offer the consumer both a machine and a tape. Hitachi was also making confident steps in the field of video. While the main players in video technology were Sony, with its Betamax format, and JVC and Matsushita, with VHS format, Hitachi was looking at where to invest. In the mid-1970s, the famous video format war broke out, Betamax versus VHS. Hitachi, like most Japanese companies, sided with VHS, an open standard from JVC. The first Hitachi-branded VCR was released around the end of the 70s. By that time VHS had already defeated Betamax on the market. In the 1980s, even Sony itself, having lost the format battle and having to start producing VHS VCRs in 1988, used Hitachi technology for these machines. In an ironic twist, Sony had to buy licenses and hardware for VHS decks from Hitachi, the same Hitachi that was not the originator of the format at all. But this only confirms that Hitachi has become a strong player. Its developments were on a par with the leaders of the video recording market. The 1980s saw rapid changes in the audio and video industry, and Hitachi tried to keep up. While continuing to produce analog equipment, cassette players, turntables, VHS decks, televisions, the company was at the same time embracing the digital technologies that came with the decade. Hitachi's VHS VCRs became widespread in many countries in the 80s. The Hitachi brand was available on video equipment shelves alongside Panasonic, Sharp, Philips and others. Some of Hitachi's later VHS models were renowned for their durability. Enthusiasts even believe that Hitachi units of the 1990s were among the most reliable VCRs of the time. In the 1980s, Hitachi naturally introduced into its VCR such innovations as hi-fi stereo sound. Here all VHS manufacturers went the same way, and Hitachi was not lagging behind. There were models with 4 heads, with remote control. By the way, Hitachi was one of the first to offer a remote control. For example, the 1985 model VT63 had a remote control. By the end of the decade, in 1987, the VHS standard had evolved into S-VHS, Super VHS, with higher definition. Hitachi was among the pioneers here too, producing S-VHS VCRs, allowing enthusiasts to shoot and view video with improved resolution. Hitachi even labeled one of its line of high-end VCRs Ultravision, hinting at Super Picture. At the same time, Hitachi was also invading the world of portable video. In the 1980s, camcorders for personal use became popular. There were two main formats: portable VHS and Betamax cameras and compact cassettes, Video 8 from Sony or VHS-C from JVC. Hitachi, being an ally of VHS, made camcorders for VHS-C compact cassette, a smaller version of VHS for portable cameras. Such cameras allowed to watch the footage immediately in a regular VCR through an adapter. Although Hitachi brand is not as famous in video cameras as, say, Panasonic or Sony, it had its own models and were in demand. For example, one of Hitachi's hit amateur cameras of the late 80s could record in S-VHS format, combining portability and high quality, quite an advanced thing at that time. However, the company did not forget about audio even in the era of video cameras. In 1982, the world saw the compact disc, and the digital revolution in home audio began. Hitachi made its mark here too. One of the first mass-produced CD players in the world was Hitachi DA1000, also known as Low-D DAD1000 on the Japanese market, released in 1982, the year of CD debut. It was a very unusual device with vertical loading, meaning that the disc was inserted with a rib. Hitachi developed it in conjunction with other firms, and what's more, licensed its design to many first-wave CD player manufacturers. That is, Hitachi Mechanics and Electronics were inside a number of early players, including, for example, models of some European brands. The DA1000 was equipped with a 14-bit digital-to-analog converter and was considered a very good device, although, like many of the first digital players, it could be hard to control. Nevertheless, the fact remains that Hitachi stood at the origins of the compact disc era, along with Philips and Sony, and earned its piece of glory of the first playad of CD players. Hitachi later released other CD players, both under its own name and OEM developments for third-party brands. In the 1980s, Hitachi also produced stereo receivers with digital tuner adjustment, graphic equalizers, cassette decks with support for new types of tape, metal tape, ferrochrome, and Dolby BC noise reduction systems. The company also experimented with more exotic formats. Hitachi's catalog included DAT digital tape recorders, although they did not become a mass product. DAT, digital audio tape, a format of the late 80s for audio on cassettes with CD quality, mainly used by professionals. Also in those years, Hitachi produced portable boomboxes so popular at that time. Some of them were sold under the Pedisco series. In general, Hitachi had a full range of audio, from headphones to massive speakers, by the mid-80s. The Hitachi brand may not have been as glamorous in this sphere as Sony with its Walkman, but it had a strong position, especially in the segment of stationary equipment. The late 80s was a period when the analog era began to clash with the digital. Hitachi, being a huge conglomerate, invested not only in the end devices, but also in the technology itself. For example, it was engaged in the development of microprocessors, memory, displays, everything that underpinned future digital AV devices. Thus, in the mid-80s, Hitachi launched mass production of its DRAM memory chips, which were then used in video equipment. The company was part of consortia for the development of new standards, for example, participated in the development of the CD-ROM format. In the 1990s, the electronics industry entered an era of global competition and rapid technological change. For Hitachi, it was a time of rethinking its place in the consumer electronics market. Nevertheless, in the first half of the 90s, the company was still delighting with new products and continued to hold on to the hi-fi and AV segment. In the early 90s, the competition between TV sets and picture display technologies continued. The CRT, kinescope, era was still in progress, but flat panel displays, plasma and LCD, were on the horizon. Hitachi, as one of the leaders in display manufacturing, contributed to this transition. Since the late 80s, the company has been experimenting with large screens. In 1989, Hitachi showed a prototype of a 40-inch plasma screen. And in 1992, it started producing ultravision projection TVs, huge rear projectors for home cinema. In those years, Hitachi's large TVs, whether projection or top-of-the-line CRT models, sold well, especially in the US, where the Hitachi brand was associated with reliable Japanese equipment. However, Hitachi realized that the future lay in flat panels. So in the 1990s it joined forces with another Japanese giant, Fujitsu, to jointly develop plasma displays, PDP. The two companies formed an alliance in 1998, and in 1999 formed a joint venture, Fujitsu Hitachi Plasma Display, investing equally in capital. The aim was to bring large color plasma TVs to market faster. Fujitsu was a plasma pioneer at the time. Back in 1996 it released a 42-inch panel, in fact, the first commercial plasma, and Hitachi had extensive experience in mass production of electronics and patents. By 2001, the two companies had joined forces to launch high-volume panel production, with the expectation that 2001 would be the year of the plasma TV. And so it happened. In the early 2000s, plasma panels became a symbol of prestige TV, and Hitachi was among the leading suppliers. Hitachi's Wu series plasma TVs appeared in markets around the world. In addition to New Age TVs, the 1990s brought the DVD format. Hitachi was not left behind. It was among the developers of the DVD standard. The first consumer DVD player came out in 1996 from Toshiba, and soon all major Japanese brands started production. Hitachi produced DVD players, as well as combined devices, for example, DVD VHS in one. But the company behaved much more interestingly in the camcorder segment. It staked on an alternative to magnetic tape, to record video directly onto a disc. In 2000, Hitachi introduced the world's first DVD camcorder, writing video directly to a mini-DVD disc format DVD RAM with a capacity of 4.7 gigabytes. It was an innovative device. Instead of cassettes, it was a disc that could be played directly on a computer or DVD player. Hitachi was thus ahead of the curve in launching the trend towards tapeless camcorders. At first, DVD cameras were a niche product. Many people continued to shoot on mini-DV cassettes, but Hitachi deserves recognition for its courage. It really offered a new approach. As far as audio is concerned, the 1990s saw the continued evolution of home sound. Large stereo components were replaced by modular minisystems, home theaters, and multi-channel sound. Hitachi gradually phased out the production of individual high-class components by the end of the 90s. The market became more mass, and here prevailed Sony, Panasonic, Aiwa. Nevertheless, Hitachi offered minicenters and AV receivers for home theater. In the Hitachi catalog of those years one could find Dolby surround receivers, CD changers, karaoke systems. That is, the company tried to cover these areas. But it was becoming more difficult to compete with the major players in audio. Nevertheless, up to the end of the 90s the company produced music centers under its own name. However, the decline was felt. Everything did not look revolutionary anymore. The market of home equipment had matured, and Hitachi no longer shone with innovations as before. As the 21st century dawned, Hitachi's hi-fi and AV business was gradually winding down. It didn't happen overnight. Rather, it was a smooth exit. In the early 2000s, Hitachi still made attempts to stay among the leaders. It participated in the HD revolution, produced plasma and LCD HD TVs, offered the first Blu-ray players. The company even tried its hand at portable electronics. For example, a couple of models of MP3 players under Hitachi brand could be found. But competition with South Korean and Chinese manufacturers was getting tougher and profits were falling. For industrial giant Hitachi, the consumer sector became a drop in the ocean of turnover, and the top management decided to take drastic steps. The turning point was the 2010s. By that time, Hitachi's TV business was clearly slipping. Plasma panels were being replaced by LCDs, with Samsung, LG, Sony, and Panasonic leading the market. Hitachi's share in televisions in its native Japanese market fell to a symbolic 1%. In January 2012, Hitachi announced that it would stop producing televisions in Japan. The last range was released under the Wu brand, and that was the end of it. 60 years after the release of its first TV in 1956, Hitachi decided to leave the TV arena. In autumn 2012, the company closed its remaining assembly lines abroad. Formerly, the Hitachi brand still appeared on TV sets in some countries. For example, in Europe the name was licensed to third-party manufacturers. But Hitachi itself no longer developed and produced TV sets. In fact, in 2012 we can count the end of the era of consumer video equipment Hitachi. Around the same time, in the 2010s, Hitachi withdrew from other areas of consumer electronics. By that time, audio equipment under this brand had almost ceased to be produced. In 2010, Hitachi sold a controlling stake in its consumer electronics division, including washing machines, refrigerators, to Chinese investors, refocusing on infrastructure projects. In 2021, Hitachi parted with a stake in Maxell, thus putting an end to the cassette chapter of the story. That is, Hitachi no longer makes either tape recorders or cassettes. Today, Hitachi's name most often comes up in the context of IT solutions, energy, and industrial automation. The company has become a huge conglomerate, where the hi-fi and AV business is just a page of history. In nearly half a century, from the 1950s to the 2000s, Hitachi went from making simple radios and tube TVs to advanced stereo components and digital devices. Looking back at Hitachi's history in audio and video, it's easy to underestimate its role. After all, it's more popular to hear the brands that still sell us TVs or speakers today. But Hitachi's contribution has been significant and varied. Hitachi's history in hi-fi and AV is a story of how the industrial giant tried its hand at entertainment and consumer products. There have been highs, when their equipment set the standard. There have also been less successful periods, say, the 1990s, when the company got a bit lost against more nimble competitors. But in all cases Hitachi approached the business thoroughly, with engineering meticulousness, and sometimes with a fair amount of daring innovation. The era of Hitachi home appliances lasted more than half a century, and although it has come to an end, the legacy has not been forgotten. Vintage enthusiasts cherish Hitachi products, and the industry keeps the memory of the innovations Hitachi brought, whether it was MOSFET in amplifiers or new recording standards. Well, that concludes this video about the history of Hitachi. As you can see, the company itself still successfully exists, but hi-fi from Hitachi is no longer produced. It's a bit sad, of course, but it's good to know that this company still exists and thrives. Thanks for watching. Until the next video.